lot of stupid stuff came out of that NFLPA survey yesterday, the one where members of the Players Union graded their owners and head coaches and everybody else, facilities, nutrition, travel, and everything. There's one element of that survey from the Pittsburgh perspective that does matter, and it's probably the most boring one on the list. Good morning to you. Good Thursday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Steelers. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into hockey and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Penguins and Pirates in the same place that you found this. If you are embracing that Art Rooney is so little thought of by the players that he would grade out to a D as an owner and have the 28th worst grade out of the 32 owners, then you're probably doing so because he didn't fire Mike Tomlin. But then you have to find a way to come to grips with the fact that the same players gave Tomlin an A, one of the highest grades of any head coach in the league. So can we just take those two things and consider them to cancel each other out and then move on to something of substance? Okay, good. Because what does matter is that the Steelers players, given the specific questions and specific answers within this survey regarding the strength and conditioning coaches, absolutely eviscerated the new staff that was brought in for the 2024 season. Phil Matus is the name of the strength and conditioning coordinator who was hired before the 2024 season to replace Marcel Pasteur, who'd been in that position for 23 years. Matus came with a fairly impressive resume, and part of that resume was that he coached Mike Tomlin's son, Dino, at the University of Maryland. And there go all the antennas up in the air, just as those who were paying attention closely to this last year had happening to them. Now, I'm going to stop this right here and interject that anytime you have a sports team, regardless of the level, whether it's the NFL or the lowest level of minor league, whatever, and you're talking about the strength and conditioning coach after you've just had a crummy season, 99 times out of 100, you're talking scapegoat. You're talking flagrant scapegoat. You're talking about the kind of stuff the Pirates do to avoid making the moves that they should make. And in this environment, with what just happened to the Steelers with those final 5 games, with how little other change there's been in the organization since then, this would have the stench of scapegoating all over it if this particular individual were to have been fired. He hasn't been fired yet. But when something like this comes out, and it's coming directly, unfiltered, if you think about it, from the players, because there's no conditions, there's nobody's names attached to any of this, and it's so overwhelming, meaning Pasteur got himself a really nice grade, always, and this guy was seen as basically the worst thing ever. Even when there were questions about, are you getting the proper assistance that you need, the proper guidance that you need in the weight room environments, it was just bad, 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 bad. Now, I know players should not be able to call their own shots. They should not be able to, appoint their own coaches or staff or whatever. But as any actual athlete will attest in the strongest possible terms, this is an exception. There needs to be a relationship. There needs to be a trust. There needs to be basically an unparalleled commitment and work ethic between the athlete and the people in this field. They need to know you're going to be there for them when they need it. They need to know that you've got their back, in some cases, literally, when it comes to spotting. And the fact, and I mean fact now because of this survey, that these players thought so little of this coach and no action still has been taken, that's, believe it or not, a far different level of mismanagement than even, keeping Matt Canada an extra year. I know it doesn't have the same public impact, to say the least, but it does in there. It does in that environment. Now, I'm going to speak for myself here. I've never heard a single word from any player about this particular individual. Not good, not bad, not anything. So I'm not speaking from any sort of information that goes beyond this survey, just to make that part clear. But when you twin this with what Tomlin said after the season, unsolicited, because believe me, nobody in that room was about to ask, hey, Mike, what about the strength and conditioning coach? He brought it up. He said that the Steelers had a few too many soft tissue injuries. That is almost always, in any sport, blamed on either the athletic trainers or the strength and conditioning coaches, or both. And they did. If you're one of those people that pays really, really close attention to this stuff, and if this segment interests you, you probably do, you'll note that there were a lot of mentions of hamstrings and pulls and strains. Those are always a red flag. You're going to have knee injuries. You're going to have things get twisted and so forth. What you never want to see as a head coach or a manager of any sport is someone just running and then reaching for the back of their leg. Those are seen, fairly or not, as being preventable. And they weren't. There were too many of them. So I'm going to ask again, why is he still there? Why is this being allowed to linger or fester? Because the Steelers might want to avoid the appearance of scapegoating? I'd almost rather have it be that than what I think it actually would be, which is that, Matus's contract wouldn't be up. When we come back, J1Q.
This segment of Daily Shot is brought to you by our good friends at Mike's Beer Bar. They're located on Federal Street, directly across from PNC Park. Mike has more than 500 beers on tap, including from more than 50 local breweries. Stop in and say hello. Tell Mike we sent you. Mike's Beer Bar. Today's J1Q comes from Brent. He asks, DK, why has the entire offseason seemingly been about who's going to be the quarterback? I feel like the defense was the problem the last 5 weeks. Is it impossible for a defense to hold teams under 24 points a game? I don't remember the Steelers hardly ever forcing an opponent to punt. This is why I want Mike Tomlin gone. It's his defense. I know he's not leaving, but what can be done to fix the defense with him staying? I appreciate all your content. I appreciate the question, Brent. I also appreciate that you'd feel that there's been too much about the quarterbacks and not enough about a whole lot of other stuff that went wrong for the Steelers in those 5 games. And really over the past half decade or so in general. However, I happen to agree with something that Omar Khan reiterated this week in Indianapolis, and that's that it has to start with quarterback. And I understand that it's, the sexy topic, it's the draw. I'm not new to everything that happens in this industry, which is that if I do a show on, let's say, for example, the strength and conditioning coach, the numbers are going to drop to the basement. I don't care. I'm looking to give you the best possible content on the Steelers, regardless of whether or not it's something that goes viral. And I feel like all of that sort of thing evens out over time. But if I do it on the quarterbacks, it's woo, look at that, tens of thousands of listens and views and downloads. That, I think, is just the nature of the football fan. The quarterback is always going to be the most interesting position. And I think, actually, that might go double in Pittsburgh, considering that we went 18 years, if you think about it, without having any kind of meaningful debate. It was basically just, how's Ben doing? Oh, Ben's okay? Cool. What else can we talk about? But now, if you take that part of my answer and just kind of set it off to the side, I do want to throw in here that where the defense is concerned, I would have the same issues with those final 5 games. What I can't say definitively, what I don't think anybody can say definitively is, what came first here, the chicken or the egg? Was it that the defense got worn down because the offense didn't stay on the field long enough or didn't put up enough points or they ran into a harder schedule. Because through the first 10, 12 games, this defense was seen not only as being a top 5 in the NFL, and don't scoff at that. Go back to what you were thinking at that time, not what you're thinking now. But also, and the players talked about this so much, it was seen as being on the rise, meaning that it still had room, realistic, plausible room to get better. So for me to look at the defense and say, well, that was my big problem with it, or that was my big problem with Tomlin, look, that's your right. You can feel however it is that you want. But for myself, I see everything being rooted in the offense, and I see a big discrepancy still between the offense and the defense, what they're capable of, and for that matter, what they did for the better part of the 2024 season. We can hopefully just disagree on that respectfully. But yeah, we're going to talk quarterbacks, my man. They don't have a quarterback yet, and none of the rest of this matters until they get one. Again, I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody who listens to Daily Shot of Steelers. And don't forget, we got a double shot coming up today at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time.